I spent nearly a decade of my life bleeding loyalty into that company's foundations. 9 years of missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and 60-hour weeks. All it took was a 10-minute meeting on a Tuesday morning to throw my career, my reputation, and my future into the trash. They handed me a cardboard box and a security escort out the door. I left with nothing but humiliation burning in my chest, until I discovered the secret they thought would stay buried forever in their encrypted files. My name is Elena Brooks, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed hard work and dedication actually meant something in corporate America. 34 years old, born and raised in a modest 2-story house in Columbus, Ohio, where my parents taught me that honest work would always pay off. How naive we all were. The Manhattan skyline outside my office window at Hamilton and Pierce Capitol used to inspire me. Every morning for 9 years, I'd step out of the subway at Wall Street Station, my heels clicking against wet pavement, joining the river of suits flowing toward their glass towers. The November air would bite at my face, but I loved it. That sharp, electric feeling of being part of something important. Hamilton and Pierce wasn't Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. But in the world of private equity, we were players. The building stood 42 floors of black glass and steel, our offices occupying floors 30 through 35. I'd worked my way up from junior analyst to senior portfolio manager. Each promotion a validation of every late night, every weekend spent poring over spreadsheets, while my college friends posted photos from wine country trips I couldn't attend. My apartment in Queens was nothing special. A 1-bedroom with a radiator that clanged like a ghost in chains and a view of another building's brick wall. But I decorated it with thriving plants and second-hand furniture I'd carefully restored, turning it into my sanctuary. Most nights, though, I'd only see it long enough to shower and grab 5 hours of sleep before racing back to the office. I remember the exact taste of the coffee from our break room, bitter, slightly burnt, always lukewarm by the time I got to drink it. My desk on the 33rd floor faced east, and on clear mornings, I could see all the way to Brooklyn. The workspace was organized chaos, 3 monitors displaying real-time market data, stacks of acquisition reports held down by my Ohio State mug, and a single framed photo of my parents at their 30th anniversary. My colleagues respected me, even if we weren't friends. There was no time for friendship when you're tracking portfolios worth hundreds of millions. I knew their coffee orders and their kids' names, but we never grabbed drinks after work. They had families to rush home to. I had spreadsheets and prospectuses. The culture at Hamilton and Pierce was what you'd expect: aggressive, fast-paced, dominated by men who wore Patek Philippe watches and traded stories about their Hamptons houses. As one of only 12 women in senior positions among nearly 200 managers, I'd learned to speak louder, work harder, and never show weakness. When male colleagues interrupted me in meetings, I'd learned to interrupt right back. When they questioned my analyses, I'd bury them in data until they surrendered. My boss, Richard Steinberg, had hired me fresh from my MBA at Northwestern. He'd seen something in me. He said, a hunger that reminded him of himself 30 years ago. For 9 years, I'd killed myself trying to live up to that initial vote of confidence. I'd generated over $400 million in returns for our clients, identified 17 successful acquisitions, and saved the firm from at least 3 catastrophic investments through my due diligence. But none of that mattered in the end. Because while I was focused on the numbers, on the deals, on proving myself worthy of that corner office I'd been promised next year for the past 3 years, I'd missed the real game being played 3 floors above me. Looking back, there were signs. Whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. Meetings that appeared and disappeared from calendars. Financial reports that didn't quite align, though the discrepancies were always explained away as accounting adjustments or preliminary figures. I'd noticed, but I'd been too trusting, too focused on my own work to dig deeper. That's the thing about loyalty. It blinds you. I thought Hamilton and Pierce was my future. I'd turned down headhunters, rejected offers from competitors that would have doubled my salary. This company was my life, my identity. Elena Brooks, Senior Portfolio Manager at Hamilton and Pierce Capitol, It was who I was. Until that Tuesday morning when everything changed. The email came at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mandatory meeting, conference room A, 9 a.m. No subject line, no context. Just Richard Steinberg's name in the sender field. I remember finishing my coffee, straightening my blazer, and grabbing my portfolio, assuming it was about the Morrison acquisition I'd been shepherding for 6 months. Conference room A was the intimidation room, floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive oak table that could seat 20, and portraits of the founding partners glaring down like disapproving ancestors. When I walked in, Richard was there with Helen Marsh from HR, and the two men I didn't recognize. Their suits were too perfect, their faces too neutral. Lawyers. "Elena, please sit," Richard said without looking up from his papers. 9 years of working together. And he couldn't meet my eyes. The chair felt cold through my skirt. Helen slid a folder across the table with practiced precision, her manicured nails clicking against the wood. "Ms. Brooks, I'm afraid we need to discuss your position with the company." "My position?" I heard myself laugh, a sharp, confused sound. "Richard, what's going on?" "The Morrison deal is closing next week. I have calls scheduled with—" "The company is restructuring." Richard interrupted, his voice flat as roadkill. "We're eliminating several positions to optimize operational efficiency." Optimize operational efficiency. Corporate speak for "you're fucked"? "You're firing me." The words came out strangled. "After 9 years, after everything I've—" "This is not a reflection on your performance," Helen interjected with a smile that belonged on a mannequin. "It's simply a business decision. We're prepared to offer you a severance package, 2 months' salary, and continued health coverage through the end of the year." 2 months. 9 years compressed into 2 months' worth of paychecks. "This is bullshit," I said, my voice rising. "You hired 2 new associates last month. Brad Morrison literally falls asleep in meetings, and Jessica hasn't closed a single deal in 18 months. But you're firing me." One of the lawyers shifted his weight, a subtle reminder of their presence. The threat was clear. Take the deal quietly or leave with nothing. Richard finally looked at me then, and for a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt? Regret? But it vanished quickly, replaced by the cold professionalism I'd once admired. "The decision has been made, Elena. Security will escort you to your desk. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. 30 minutes to pack up 9 years. The walk to my desk felt like a funeral procession. Word had already spread, the office vultures were circling, pretending to work while watching me from the corners of their eyes. Some looked sympathetic, others relieved it wasn't them. Brad Morrison actually had the audacity to smile. Security handed me a cardboard box, the corporate walk of shame starter kit. I threw in my parents' photo, my Ohio State mug, a few personal files. My hands shook as I unplugged my phone charger. 9 years of 60-hour weeks. And it all fit in a box I could carry with one arm. "Elena." Marcus Hale appeared at my cubicle wall, his dark face creased with concern. He was one of the few black senior managers, hired the same year as me. We'd survived the 2016 layoffs together, celebrated each other's promotions from afar. "This is wrong. This is so wrong." "It's fine." I lied, my throat tight. "I'll be fine." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Be careful. There's something—" He stopped, glancing at the security guard. "Just be careful." I wanted to ask what he meant, but the guard was already nudging me toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of the 33rd floor one last time. My desk already being cleared, my computer already being wiped, my existence already being erased. The lobby's marble floors echoed with my footsteps. The security guard walked me all the way to the revolving doors, as if I might steal a potted plant on my way out. The November air hit me like a slap. Taxis honked, people pushed past. The city moved on as if my world hadn't just imploded. I stood there on the sidewalk, holding my pathetic box, watching Hamilton and Pierce employees stream in and out. They avoided eye contact, stepping around me like I was contagious. Like failure might be catching. The subway ride to Queens was a blur. A homeless man asked for change, and I almost laughed. We were both unemployed now. Except he probably hadn't wasted 9 years of his life believing in a lie. My apartment felt different when I walked in, smaller, shabbier, the plants seeming to droop in sympathy. I set the box on my kitchen counter and poured myself a whiskey at 11 a.m. The burn felt appropriate. Sitting in my living room, still in my work clothes, I replayed the meeting obsessively. Richard's inability to look at me, Helen's plastic smile, the lawyer's silent presence. Something was off. This wasn't just restructuring. Companies don't fire their top performers during their most profitable quarter unless they need them gone, unless they know something, unless they're hiding something. Marcus's warning echoed, "Be careful." Careful of what? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, scrolling through LinkedIn, looking at my former colleagues' profiles. The company page showed Hamilton and Pierce was hiring, 3 new positions posted just yesterday. Not restructuring, replacing, but replacing me with whom? And more importantly, why? The first week was the worst. I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m., muscle memory pulling me from bed before reality crashed down. I had nowhere to go. The coffee maker would gurgle its familiar morning song while I stood in my kitchen, still wearing the old Northwestern t-shirt I slept in, staring at nothing. By day 3, the rejection emails started rolling in. "We've decided to pursue other candidates. Not a good fit at this time. We'll keep your resume on file." Each one felt like another small death. Another confirmation that maybe Hamilton and Pierce was right to throw me away. The bills didn't stop. Rent was due in 2 weeks, $2,800 for my Queen's shoebox. Student loans demanded their monthly pound of flesh. Con Edison didn't care that I'd been restructured out of existence. My savings would last maybe 4 months if I cut everything non-essential. No more organic groceries from Whole Foods. No more yoga classes. No more anything that made life bearable. I found myself drinking wine at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, scrolling through Instagram, watching former classmates post from their corner offices and business trips to Tokyo. My phone rang. Mom calling from Ohio. I let it go to voicemail. How could I tell her that her daughter, the one who made it in New York, was sitting in unwashed pajamas, unemployed, discarded like yesterday's newspaper? The apartment became my prison. Dishes piled in the sink, mail accumulated unopened. The plants started dying. Even they could sense the failure poisoning the air. I'd catch glimpses of myself in the mirror and see a stranger, hollow eyes, unwashed hair, wearing the same sweatpants for the 4th day straight. But it was the nights that really got me. 3 a.m. became my unwanted companion. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every meeting, every presentation, every decision from the last year. What had I missed? What sign had I ignored? There was that meeting in August, the quarterly review where the numbers didn't quite add up. I'd questioned a $15 million discrepancy in the Hartwell Fund, but Richard had brushed it off. "Accounting error," he'd said. "Already corrected." I'd accepted it because I trusted him, because questioning further would have meant questioning the integrity of the entire firm. Then there was September's board meeting. I wasn't invited, which was unusual. When I'd asked Richard about it, he'd seemed irritated. "Not every meeting requires your input, Elena." The sharpness in his tone had stung, but I'd attributed it to stress. The Morrison acquisition paperwork haunted me most. Something about the valuation had felt off, inflated, like someone had pumped air into a balloon right before presenting it to investors. But the senior partners had signed off. And who was I to question the men who'd built this firm? Who was I? I was the one who'd saved them from the Garrett Industries disaster 3 years ago when I'd discovered their books were cooked. I was the one who'd flagged the Peterson deal as fraudulent before we'd committed $50 million. I was the one who actually did the fucking work while they played golf at their country clubs. The anger finally came on day 10, replacing the despair like a fever breaking. I wasn't fired for poor performance. I was fired because I was good at my job. Too good. I noticed things. I asked questions. I was a liability to whatever they were doing up there on the 36th floor. I started making lists, trying to piece together the puzzle. All those preliminary figures that changed between drafts. The clients who'd mysteriously withdrawn their investments last quarter with no explanation. The way certain files were restricted, accessible only to C-suite executives. My laptop sat on my coffee table, taunting me. I still had it, my personal laptop that I'd occasionally used for work when traveling. It hadn't asked for it back, probably didn't even know I had it. Late one night, wine-drunk and furious. I opened it. Most of my access had been revoked, obviously. Company email, gone. Shared drives, blocked. But there, in a folder buried in my downloads from 2 months ago, were the files I'd saved from the Morrison deal. Working documents I'd pulled down to review on a flight to Chicago. I sobered up instantly. These weren't the final versions. These were drafts, iterations, the raw data before someone had sanitized it. My fingers trembled as I clicked through spreadsheets, PDF scans, email chains I'd been CC'd on before being mysteriously removed from the distribution list. The numbers were different, not by a little, by millions. Assets that appeared in final reports didn't exist in the originals. Liabilities had vanished like digital smoke. Someone had been playing an elaborate shell game, moving money around like a street hustler with 3 cups and a ball. "What the fuck?" I whispered to my empty apartment. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or things will get worse for you." My blood turned to ice water. They were watching. Somehow, they knew I'd opened those files. But that meant one thing for certain. There was definitely something to find. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking, poured another wine with trembling fingers, sat in the dark, thinking. They'd already taken my job, my reputation, my future. What else could they do to me? Famous last words, as it turned out. But that night, sitting in my pathetic apartment with my dying plants and unpaid bills, I made a decision. If I was going down, I was taking them with me. The only question was, how deep did this go? And more importantly, did I have the courage to find out? The threatening text had the opposite effect they'd intended. Instead of backing off, I became obsessed. If they were scared enough to threaten me, then I was on to something big. I spent the next 3 days learning about encryption, YouTube tutorials, Reddit forums, Stack Overflow threads. The internet became my classroom. The files I'd found were just the tip of something larger, I was certain. But there were other folders on my laptop. Ones with INC extensions that wouldn't open. Password protected, encrypted, locked away like digital secrets. My coffee table became command central. Empty coffee cups, handwritten notes. My laptop perpetually heated from running decryption software I downloaded from questionable websites. I tried every password I could think of. Birthdays, company mottos, Richard's kids' names. Nothing worked. Then, at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, exhausted and about to give up, I remembered something. Richard's assistant, Patricia, had once complained about his terrible password habits. He uses the same one for everything. She'd laughed at the Christmas party 2 years ago. His yacht's name and the year he bought it. Serenity 2019. My fingers trembled as I typed it. The first folder opened like a flower blooming and fast forward. Holy shit! The screen filled with documents. Real documents, not the sanitized versions. Internal memos, wire transfer confirmations, correspondence with offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. My stomach churned as I read, each file more damning than the last. Hamilton and Pierce had been inflating asset values for at least 3 years. They'd created phantom investments, shell companies that existed only on paper. Fictional returns to attract more investor money. It was a Ponzi scheme dressed in Armani suits and legitimate-looking prospectuses. The number at the bottom of one spreadsheet made me physically gasp. $193 million in fabricated assets. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the email chain from 6 weeks ago. Richard, CEO James Hamilton, CFO Douglas Pierce. and 3 other senior partners discussing the Elena problem. She's been asking questions about the Hartwell Fund discrepancies. Richard had written, getting too close to the Morrison numbers. Hamilton's response was chilling in its casualness. Then we accelerate her termination. Make it about restructuring. Pay her off, get her to sign an NDA. If she refuses, we have other options. Other options. I touched my throat unconsciously. I kept digging, screenshotting everything, saving copies to 3 different USB drives. There were kickbacks from supposed acquisitions that never happened. Management fees charged for funds that didn't exist. Client money diverted to personal accounts, then washed through a maze of international transfers. One document made me stop breathing, a list of client accounts they'd been stealing from, pension funds, university endowments, a children's hospital in Boston. They weren't just defrauding rich investors, they were stealing from teachers' retirements and sick kids. My phone rang at 4 a.m., jarring me from my focus. Unknown number. Hello? Breathing. Then, Ms. Brooks. You were warned. Who is this? Stop what you're doing, delete everything, walk away. This is your last warning. The line went dead. I looked around my apartment, suddenly paranoid. Were they watching me now? I moved to my window, peering through the blinds at the street below. A black sedan sat idling across from my building, exhaust visible in the cold November air. It had been there when I'd looked an hour ago. My hands shook as I continued working, faster now, desperate to capture everything before they stopped me. The final encrypted folder was the largest, nearly 2 GB. Serenity 2019 didn't work. Neither did any variation. Think, Elena. Think. Then I remembered the second part of Patricia's complaint. And when that doesn't work, he just adds his wife's birthday backwards. Richard's wife, Margaret. Birthday, March 15th, 1971. Serenity 2019117031. The folder opened. Inside were the books, the real books. Not the ones they showed investors or regulators. These showed everything. The actual assets, 1/3 of what they claimed. The actual liabilities, triple what they reported. And most damning of all, a detailed record of which partner had taken what, when, and how much. James Hamilton, $43 million diverted to accounts in Switzerland. Douglas Pierce, $38 million in consulting fees to his own shell companies. Richard Steinberg, $27 million in fictitious investment returns. The list went on. 12 partners in total, all feeding at the trough while their clients, trusting people who'd handed over their life savings, were being slowly bled dry. I found projections too. At the current burn rate, Hamilton and Pierce would be insolvent within 6 months. They knew the ship was sinking, and they were looting everything valuable before it went under. My firing wasn't about restructuring, it was about removing witnesses before the collapse. The black sedan's engine started. I watched it pull away, my heart hammering. Were they coming up? Had I triggered some kind of alert by accessing these files? I grabbed my USB drives, my laptop, shoved them in a backpack. If they were coming, I couldn't be here. But where could I go? Who could I trust? My phone buzzed. Not an unknown number this time. Marcus Hale. Elena, we need to talk. Not over phone. Molly's Diner on Junction Boulevard. 1 hour. Come alone. Bring everything you've found. How did he know I'd found anything? Marcus, what? 1 hour. And Elena, take the fire escape. Don't use the front door. The line went dead. I looked at the USB drives in my hand, each one containing enough evidence to destroy Hamilton and Pierce, to send a dozen men to federal prison, but also enough to make me a target for people with $200 million reasons to want me silent. I threw on a coat, shoved the drives deep in my pockets, and headed for the window. The fire escape was rusty, probably hadn't been used in years. But as I climbed out into the freezing November air, one thought kept me moving. They'd taken everything from me. Now it was my turn to return the favor. Molly's Diner was a greasy spoon that had survived gentrification through pure stubbornness. Fluorescent lights flickered over cracked vinyl booths, and the coffee tasted like motor oil. But it was perfect for a clandestine meeting. Marcus was already there, hunched in the back corner, baseball cap pulled low. "You look like shit," he said as I slid into the booth. "Thanks. You look paranoid." "I am paranoid, and you should be too." He glanced around, then leaned forward. "They fired me yesterday." "What? Why?" "Same reason as you. Restructuring." He laughed bitterly. 15 years, Elena. 15 years of making them rich, and they tossed me out like garbage. The waitress approached, elderly, disinterested, perfect. We ordered coffee we wouldn't drink and waited for her to shuffle away. "But here's the thing," Marcus continued, his voice dropping. "I knew it was coming. I've been documenting everything for the past year." "You knew about the fraud?" "Suspected. Little things at first. Numbers that didn't match, meetings I was excluded from, files that disappeared from shared drives. Then, bigger things. Remember the Caldwell acquisition last year?" I nodded. A $50 million deal for a tech startup that had seemed overpriced even then. "Caldwell doesn't exist," Marcus said flatly. "Never did. It's a shell company owned by Hamilton's brother-in-law. The $50 million went in, got invested, and vanished into offshore accounts. Jesus Christ! Gets worse. You know why they fired us specifically." He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo of a document. "We're on a list. Potential liabilities, they called us. Employees who ask too many questions, who have access to too much information, who might figure out what's really happening." My stomach turned. "How many names?" 14. 7 already gone, fired or forced out over the past 6 months. You and I were numbers 8 and 9. "Who else?" "Patricia, Richard's assistant, she's number 10. Then some analysts, a few accountants, anyone who might piece things together." I pulled out one of my USB drives, slid it across the table. "I have everything, Marcus, the real books, the offshore accounts, emails discussing the fraud, nearly $200 million. His eyes widened as he pocketed the drive. "How did you?" "Had some old files on my personal laptop. Encrypted, but I cracked them. Elena, this is enough to bury them. But it's also enough to get you killed. They already threatened me." Marcus's face went gray. "When?" "Yesterday. Anonymous calls, texts. There was a car watching my apartment." "Shit." He rubbed his face. "Okay, listen. I have a contact at the FBI, white-collar crime division. But we need more than just files. We need corroboration, multiple sources, bulletproof evidence they can't dismiss or bury." "What about the others on the list? The ones not fired yet?" "Too risky. They're still inside, probably being watched." He paused, thinking. "But there's someone else. You remember Tom Bradley?" The name was vaguely familiar. "From accounting?" "Yeah. Fired 8 months ago, supposedly for performance issues." "But Elena, Tom was their best forensic accountant. He trained half the department." "You think he knew?" "I think he found something he wasn't supposed to. He lives in Jersey now. Been trying to get anyone to listen to his story, but without proof." Marcus pulled out a pen, wrote an address on a napkin. "We need him." Over the next week, we became a strange kind of team. 3 discarded employees united by betrayal and a hunger for justice. Tom Bradley turned out to be a godsend, paranoid, brilliant, and sitting on 6 months of meticulously documented evidence he'd gathered before his firing. His apartment in Newark was like a conspiracy theorist's dream. Whiteboards covered in financial flowcharts, boxes of printed documents, laptops running analysis programs. But unlike conspiracy theories, this was all real. "I tracked 17 shell companies," Tom explained, his eyes bright with vindication that someone finally believed him. "Each one receiving investments from Hamilton and Pierce, then dissolving after the money disappeared. Look at this." He showed us a pattern we'd missed. The fraud wasn't random. It followed a schedule, escalating before each quarterly report. creating fake profits to show investors. Then they'd use new investor money to pay returns to existing clients. Classic Ponzi behavior. They're about 4 weeks from collapse, Tom calculated. Maybe less. The November reports are due, and they don't have enough real assets to cover even half of what they owe. We worked 18-hour days, cross-referencing our evidence, building an airtight case. Marcus's FBI contact, Agent Sarah Chen, finally agreed to meet after we sent her a sample of what we had. "This is substantial," she said, reviewing our files in a coffee shop in Lower Manhattan. "But I need you to understand, these people have resources, lawyers, connections. The moment we move, they'll fight back hard." "Let them," I said. "We have the truth. Truth doesn't always win in court, but this." She tapped the files. "This might be enough. Give me a week to get a task force together. And in the meantime, be careful. If they get desperate..." Her warning was cut short by Marcus's phone buzzing. He went pale reading the text. "Patricia," he said. "Richard's assistant, she was in a car accident last night. Hit and run." We all knew it wasn't an accident. "Is she..." I couldn't finish. "Critical condition, coma." Agent Chen stood. "I'm moving this up. All of you, stay together, stay public, stay safe. Don't go home alone. These people are cornered animals now, and that makes them dangerous." As she left, I looked at Marcus and Tom. 3 underdogs against a $200 million fraud machine. David versus Goliath. If Goliath had Swiss bank accounts and a willingness to kill... "You scared?" Tom asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "Good." Marcus said grimly. "Fear keeps you sharp, and we're going to need to be very sharp to survive this." The call from the New York Herald came at the worst possible moment. We were holed up in Tom's Newark apartment, surrounded by evidence boxes. When Marcus's phone rang, "You're the ones who've been asking questions about Hamilton and Pierce," the voice said, female, confident, skeptical. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, investigative reporter. I think we should meet." Marcus put her on speaker, gesturing for us to stay quiet. "How did you get this number?" "I protect my sources, Mr. Hale. But let's just say someone at the FBI thought we might have mutual interests. I've been tracking irregularities at your former employer for months. Meet me, or don't. But I'm running a story either way." We met her that afternoon at a park in Hoboken, public enough to feel safe. Jennifer Walsh was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and the kind of aggressive energy that probably terrified her interview subjects. "Show me what you have," she said without preamble. We gave her pieces, enough to prove we weren't conspiracy theorists, not enough to give away everything. She scanned documents on her phone, asked pointed questions, took notes in shorthand. "This is bigger than anything I imagined," she finally said. "But I need more than documents. I need people willing to go on record." "That's suicide," Tom protested. "They already put Patricia in the hospital." "Allegedly," Jennifer corrected. "Without proof of connection, it's just a tragic accident. Look, I understand the risk. But documents can be disputed, dismissed as forgeries, or taken out of context. Human sources, multiple witnesses telling consistent stories, that's harder to discredit." My phone buzzed. Richard Steinberg calling. I showed the others. "Answer it," Jennifer said, pulling out a recording device. "Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state, but New York isn't. You're in New Jersey, gray area, but usable." I answered on speaker. "Richard." "Elena." His voice was different, strained, desperate. "We need to talk. I can explain everything. Like you explained why you fired me." "That wasn't my call. Hamilton and Pierce insisted." "But Elena, you don't understand what you're dealing with. These people, they're dangerous." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm trying to warn you. Please, meet with me, alone. I can make this right. There's a way out of this for everyone." "Including Patricia? Is she getting a way out from her coma?" Silence. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Elena, I'm trying to help you. But if you go public with whatever you think you found, they'll destroy you. Your reputation, your future, everything. And it won't stop there. Your parents in Ohio. Are you threatening my family? My voice went ice cold. I'm telling you what they're capable of. Meet me tonight, Pier 45, 9 p.m. Come alone, and we can fix this. He hung up. Jennifer was already typing on her phone. Pier 45 is isolated at night, Marcus said. No way you're going. I have to. It's a trap, Tom insisted. Obviously. But he's scared, desperate. He might give us something we can use. Jennifer looked up. I can have a photographer there. Hidden, long-range lens. If anything happens, I'm already dead, I said flatly. But Richard's weak. He was always the weak link. If I can flip him. We spent the next 3 hours preparing. Jennifer would publish regardless, but a confession from a senior partner would seal it. The FBI was building their case, but needed more time. We were caught between law enforcement bureaucracy and corporate killers. At 8:30 p.m., I headed for Manhattan. Marcus and Tom wanted to come, but showing up with backup would spook Richard. Jennifer's photographer was already in position. I wore 3 recording devices, 1 obvious, 2 hidden. Pier 45 jutted into the Hudson River, empty except for shadows and wind. Richard was there, silhouetted against the water, looking older than his 58 years. You came alone, he said. So did you. He laughed bitterly. No one's ever alone anymore. They're watching, always watching. Then let's make this quick. What do you want? I want out. His voice cracked. I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just inflating a few numbers to get through a bad quarter. We were going to fix it, pay it back. But Hamilton and Pierce, they saw opportunity where I saw temporary necessity. So you're the victim here? I'm not a victim. I'm a coward. And now I'm trapped. If I talk, I'm dead. If I don't, I go to prison when this implodes. You're going to prison either way. Maybe. But there are degrees of prison and degrees of death. He turned to face me fully. They killed Patricia. Elena. Made it look like an accident, but it was murder. She was going to talk to the FBI. My recording devices were getting every word. Who ordered it? Hamilton. Pierce signed off. They have a man. Vincent something. Professional. He makes problems disappear. And I'm a problem? The biggest one they have. You and your little group. They know about Marcus and Tom. They know about the reporter. They're planning to. The shot came from nowhere. Richard's eyes went wide, a red flower blooming on his white shirt. He dropped to his knees, reaching for me. Run! He gasped. There. The second shot spun him into the water. I ran, zigzagging, waiting for the bullet that would stop me. Car tires screeched somewhere behind me. Shouts. Another shot, hitting the concrete near my feet. I made it to the street, into crowds, into lights and witnesses. My phone was already ringing. Jennifer. We got it, she said. Everything. The photographer caught the shooter. The story goes live in 6 hours. Richard's dead. I know. I'm sorry. But Elena. His confession. The shooting. It proves everything. They can't spin this. 6 hours. We just had to survive 6 more hours. But Hamilton and Pierce wouldn't go down without a fight. And we'd just declared war. The New York Herald's website crashed 3 times in the first hour after Jennifer's story went live. Hamilton and Pierce, the 200 million fraud, ran across the homepage with Richard's final moments captured in haunting photographs. His confession. The muzzle flash. His body falling into the Hudson. I watched the chaos unfold from an FBI safe house in Brooklyn, surrounded by agents who'd materialized the moment Richard died. Agent Sarah Rodriguez, who'd taken over from her colleague, kept refreshing her tablet as the story spread like wildfire across social media. CNN just picked it up, she announced. CNBC, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, everyone's running with it. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Reporters, former colleagues, distant relatives who'd seen my name in the article. I didn't answer any of them. Marcus and Tom were in separate safe houses, part of the FBI's witness protection protocol until arrests were made. By 8 a.m., Hamilton and Pierce's website was down. By 9 a.m., federal agents were raiding their offices, carrying out boxes of documents while news helicopters circled overhead. The footage was surreal. The building I'd entered every day for 9 years being treated like a crime scene. James Hamilton was arrested at his Westchester mansion at 10:43 a.m. The footage showed him in pajamas and handcuffs, being led to a federal vehicle while his wife screamed at reporters. Douglas Pierce tried to run, making it as far as JFK Airport before authorities stopped him from boarding a flight to Geneva. Pierce had $2.8 million in cash in his luggage, Rodriguez told me, showing me the arrest report. Guess he knew this day was coming. One by one, they fell. 12 partners, 15 associates, all named in Jennifer's meticulously researched exposé. The article included our evidence, the documents, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. But it was Richard's dying confession, caught on camera. That made it undeniable. Vincent Russo, the enforcer who'd killed Richard and Patricia, was arrested in a warehouse in Queens. They found weapons, false identities, and a burn phone with messages directly from Hamilton ordering the hits. He'd kept everything, insurance against his employers. Even killers don't trust fraudsters. The victims started coming forward. The pension fund that had lost $30 million, the children's hospital whose endowment had been drained, retirees who'd trusted Hamilton and Pierce with their life savings, only to discover they'd been investing in fiction. Current count is 2,147 victims. Rodriguez updated me on day 3. Total losses approaching $200 million, just like you calculated. The SEC announced a full investigation. The Attorney General held a press conference praising the brave whistleblowers who'd risked everything to expose the truth. They didn't name us, but everyone knew. My parents called, crying. We saw the news. Mom sobbed. Elena, they could have killed you. But they didn't, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. They didn't win. The trials would take years, Rodriguez warned, but the asset freezing was immediate. Every account, every property, every yacht and Portia and Hampton's house was seized. Hamilton's wife filed for divorce within a week, claiming she knew nothing. Pierce's son released a statement disowning his father. Tom got a job offer from the SEC. They wanted his forensic accounting skills on their side. Marcus was recruited by 3 different firms, all eager to hire someone with proven integrity. Me. I sat in that safe house, watching an empire crumble, feeling empty. You did the right thing, Rodriguez said one evening as we watched Hamilton's perp walk for the 10th time on the news. Did I? Richard's dead. Patricia might never wake up. And for what? The money's gone. Those retirees won't get their savings back. But no one else will lose money to these people. That hospital can rebuild. Those pension funds can recover. You stopped the bleeding. The trial started 6 months later. I testified for 3 days, walking the jury through every document, every transaction, every lie. Hamilton's lawyer tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. The prosecutor simply showed Richard's dying confession and asked if revenge looked like risking your life for the truth. Hamilton got 45 years. Pierce got 40. The others received sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years. Vincent Russo got life without parole for the murders. Patricia woke up during the sentencing. She'd never walk again. But she was alive. She testified from her wheelchair, her voice strong as she described the threats she'd received, the fear she'd lived with, the relief that it was finally over. When it ended. When the last verdict was read and the last criminal led away. Jennifer Walsh published a follow-up article. She called us the whistleblowers who brought down Wall Street's biggest fraud. There was a photo, Marcus, Tom, and me standing outside the courthouse, looking tired but victorious. Companies started implementing new oversight policies, citing Hamilton and Pierce as what happens when greed goes unchecked. Congress held hearings about financial regulation. The SEC created new requirements for investment firms. But sitting in my queen's apartment, the same one I'd almost lost, now paid for with the book advance from a publisher eager for my story, I wondered if anything had really changed. Somewhere, in some gleaming tower, another Hamilton was inflating numbers. Another Pierce was moving money offshore. Another group of employees was being marked as liabilities for asking questions. The system that created Hamilton and Pierce was still there, waiting for the next ambitious men willing to sacrifice everything for money. But maybe that was okay, because now they knew we were watching too. The employees they fired, the whistleblowers they threatened, the truth-tellers they tried to silence. We were still here, and we weren't afraid anymore. 2 years have passed since that November morning when my world collapsed. I'm sitting in the same coffee shop where I used to grab my morning latte before rushing to Hamilton and Pierce, but everything else has changed. The barista doesn't recognize me anymore. I'm no longer the woman in the sharp suit checking her phone every 30 seconds. The book did well. Whistleblower: How We Exposed Wall Street's $200 million Lie spent 6 weeks on the bestseller list. The movie rights sold to Netflix. They cast someone prettier than me, someone who looked good running from assassins in heels. Hollywood always makes trauma look glamorous. I don't work in finance anymore. Trust is a funny thing. Once you expose one massive fraud, every firm assumes you'll find skeletons in their closets too. They're probably right. Instead, I teach now. Columbia Business School brought me in as an ethics professor. My students call me Professor Brooks, and they have no idea their boring lecturer once had a gun pointed at her on a pier. Marcus runs his own consulting firm, helping companies identify internal fraud before it destroys them. Tom works for the Department of Justice, training investigators to spot what we spotted. We meet for coffee sometimes. 3 survivors of a war nobody else really understands. Patricia learned to walk again, defying every doctor's prediction. She sent me a photo last month from her daughter's wedding, standing unassisted, smiling. She never talks about that night, the headlights coming at her, the moment she knew they'd come to silence her. Some wounds heal better in silence. Hamilton died in prison 8 months into his sentence. Heart attack, they said. Pierce is still there. Probably will be until he dies. I don't feel sorry for them. I save my sympathy for the retirees who lost everything. The hospital that had to cut programs. The families destroyed by greed dressed up as financial expertise. Sometimes I Google the other names from that list. The 14 liabilities Hamilton and Pierce wanted gone. Most scattered to the wind, found new careers, new cities, new lives. One became a whistleblower advocate. Another killed himself 6 months after being fired, before the truth came out. I wonder if knowing he was right would have saved him. The money, most of it's gone forever. Hidden in accounts we'll never find or spent on luxuries already depreciated to nothing. The victims got cents on the dollar from the asset sales. Justice doesn't always come with reimbursement. But here's what I learned, sitting in my queen's apartment at 3 a.m., staring at those encrypted files. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's downloading decryption software while your hands shake. It's meeting a source while knowing there's a target on your back. It's telling the truth when the truth could kill you. Hamilton and Pierce thought they could buy silence, that everyone has a price or a breaking point. They were wrong. Some things matter more than money or safety or career prospects. Sometimes, the principle is worth the pain. My students always ask if I regret it. Would I do it again? Knowing the cost? Knowing Richard would die. Patricia would be paralyzed. My career in finance would be over? Yes, every time, yes. Because somewhere out there, another Elena Brooks is staring at suspicious numbers on her screen. Another Marcus Hale is being excluded from meetings he should attend. Another Tom Bradley is documenting discrepancies everyone else ignores. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember our story and realize they're not crazy, not alone, not powerless. The system that created Hamilton and Pierce still exists. The greed, the entitlement, the belief that rules don't apply if you're rich enough. It's all still there, wearing different suits, hiding behind different logos. But so are we, the ones who notice, the ones who question, the ones who refuse to look away. They fired me after 9 years of hard work. They thought that was the end of my story. Instead, it was the beginning of theirs. A story that ended with handcuffs, headlines, and the complete destruction of everything they'd built on lies. I finish my coffee, leave a good tip, and head to class. Today's lecture is on corporate ethics and the cost of silence. My students think it's theoretical, philosophical. They don't know their professor has counted that cost in bodies and bullets, in friends lost and futures destroyed. But I'll teach them anyway. Because maybe one of them will be sitting where I sat, seeing what I saw, faced with the choice between comfortable silence and dangerous truth. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember that sometimes. The person who gets fired is the only one worth trusting. The truth doesn't always win, but lies, no matter how expensive, always cost more in the end. Hamilton and Pierce learned that the hard way. They paid $200 million to discover that some things, integrity, justice, truth, can't be bought, sold, or buried in encrypted files. They thought they were masters of the universe. Turns out, they were just criminals in expensive suits. And I was the one who proved it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from right now. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in my position? Your perspectives mean everything to me.